morning. Okay, so I'm going to start this maybe slightly differently to how you would normally start a talk like this. And I'm going to ask you all to close your eyes. I'm just going to take a moment of silence. I just want to focus on your breathing, okay? So just take some deep breaths. So breathe really deeply into your stomach, okay? Like take as deep a breath as you think you can and then take a deeper one. And actually hold that breath for a second and then let it out really slowly. And we generally breathe quite shallowly, so just when you think you're finished breathing, breathe until it all comes out. And then pause for a sec before you breathe in again. And just repeat that a few times. And if you find your mind wandering to thoughts, bring your focus back to your breath. Okay, and when you're ready, just slowly open your eyes and bring yourself back into the room. The next thing I want you to do is turn to the person next to you, okay? And I want you, you're going to have a minute, no, I'm going to give you 2 minutes each. I'm going to give you a minute each. Just to say, I want you to express to the person next to you how you're feeling. Okay, so just really reflect for a sec before we start this. No, don't start. Shh, stop. Just really check in with yourself. How am I feeling? Am I tired? Maybe I feel physical. I fell skiing, so I bust my shoulder, so I'm feeling a bit kind of tight around here. Or maybe I feel, a bit anxious, or I'm upset, or I had a row with my girlfriend or my mother before I left this morning. Whatever it might be. Okay, so I'm going to give you, start. The person with the shortest hair starts. Okay? It's always easy with me, I get to go first. And the other person, just listen. Okay? So just hold on, we haven't started yet. Hold on. Hello. So, shortest hair person speaks. The other person, you just listen. You don't say anything. It's not a conversation. Okay? Are we ready? Let me get the timer going. So, shortest hair person, off we go. So, how are you feeling right now? Okay, and stop. Okay, can you now switch the other way around? So the person with the longer hair, you now say how you're feeling right now for a minute. Okay, and stop. How's that feel to do that? So there's a logic behind both of those things. First of all, the silence pieces. We're all incredibly busy, and we kind of we rush into meetings, and then we launch straight into meetings. Whereas actually, just to take a moment's stillness helps you arrive, and then the check-in helps you to just, if there's something bugging you, have you experienced you go into a meeting and you're really worried about something? So you're not actually present in the meeting. Your head's going round. It happens to me. I'm worried about something. My head's going round thinking about that. I'm not actually present in the meeting. Whereas by doing a check-in, you can kind of get something off your chest that's bugging you, that's worrying you. So then you can be so the combination of those two means you can be really present. Okay? So these are, when we run meetings in Thornton's Budgeons, which I'll tell you a bit about later, we start every meeting in this way. And we'll end the session today in the way we end our meetings. And it's all about heart. And for me, heart is about creating an environment where you can open your heart. In business, the business world particularly, we're all taught you've got to be tough and you can't show your emotions, and that you're macho and you can't, you couldn't cry in work. I mean, God forbid, imagine that. But actually what that means is we shut down. We don't actually entirely show up. And for me, what I've realised is that the key to a thriving company is to be able to create a truthful environment where people can say what they feel. They don't have to behave in a way that says, well, I can't say that. And now, what's the boss? So, I'm going to see Kieran who's the boss. And what's he going to... Okay, so I'm thinking that he probably wants me to say that, so that's what I'm going to say. Now, do you think that's really productive? Do you think you're going to have a thriving company if you do that? And to tell truth, people have to feel safe. I have to feel safe in my meeting with Kieran. If I tell him his wonderful, great idea, his strategy for the company is not going to work. Now, I do it carefully and politely and not be rude. I have to feel that Kieran's going to say to me, okay, or Andrew, tell me more about that. Rather than say, well, I don't give a shit. How dare you say that, and so on and so forth. So you have to create a safe environment. There was a fascinating program on BBC Radio 4 a few weeks ago about secrets. So secrets are the opposite of truth. And it's worth finding. I don't know, it's probably still on iPlayer. It's absolutely fascinating. And it basically says that, first of all, secrets can be psychologically damaging to human beings. And secondly, people who hold a lot of secrets will find certain tasks at work difficult to do. They also talked about sharing a secret with someone, you get a bond. So if I sit with Johnny here and I kind of reveal something really private, personal, show some vulnerability, that will create a bond between us. So if you have a working environment where people can share secrets, they can share kind of truths, then you're going to create a very different working environment. Now, why is this important? Gallup do a study every couple of years on workplace satisfaction, and the last one they did a couple of years ago said that across the world, 87% of people are emotionally disconnected from their work. 87%. And it's something like, of that, 30-odd% are really severely, they're really, really angry. They really hate their work. And the other group aren't connected to it. So like only 13% of us globally are properly connected and enjoy our work. Okay? Now you think in your working period, for some of you who are about to enter that stage, so from early 20s till 65, 70, whatever, we spend half of our non-sleeping time in our work. And 87% of us are disconnected. So you can sort of see, well, maybe it explains why the world is in quite a lot of turmoil at the moment. So that's why I think this is relevant to not just to business, but to the world in general. Why the subject of art and business is very critical. Let me tell you about kind of how I got to here. Okay, so I grew up in Sutton on the north side of Dublin. At the age of 13, I started cleaning the backyard out of Kills, which is the newsagents under Superquin's head office. And I used to serve Fergal Quinn his newspaper in the morning. And I met him recently to talk about art and business, and I was reminded that I used to sell him his newspaper sort of 35 years ago or something. And I ended up actually running the place for the guy who owned it when he was on holiday and at weekends and so on. I did a BCom and then a master's, and we didn't have this fantastic facility here. We were just up in Belfield doing our master's. And then I joined Mars as a graduate trainee. So fairly classical business to career. Set up a consultancy called SRCG in retailing. Travel the world advising big multinational companies on retail strategy. Marks and Spencer's, BP, Tesco, Unilever, PepsiCo. But towards the end of my time doing that, I started to get more and more disillusioned by how short-term profit-focused these companies were. And sometimes they were doing these projects just to tick a box. They didn't really care, actually. And it's kind of disheartening to spend all the time and energy doing something which actually the people you're doing it with don't really care. And then you get these phone calls where our client would ring up and say, oh yeah, sorry, but we've had a call from Brussels or New York, which is where the head office is. And there's a bit of a quarterly profit shortfall, so I've been asked to find $1 million in savings, and I'm sorry, the project we're doing is going to be cancelled. Even though technically it was a really strategically important project. And at the time I had been talking a lot about how it's actually easy to compete with the likes of Tesco in the supermarket world. If you, as a small or independent retailer, if you are community-based, if you care, if you do something a bit different. And funny, I got the chance to do it because Musgrave, who you'll know from Ireland, bought Budgeons, which is a small traditional English chain, and set about converting it to the franchise model they have here, the super value centre type model. And so I got a chance to buy one and then a second supermarket in London. A lot of people thought I was a bit crazy going from running a consultancy to running a supermarket. And normally you do something, then become a consultant on it. I was a consultant and then I went to do it, which is a bit kind of bizarre, but it's the way things work out. So I bought one in Crouch End in North London and another one then in Belsize Park. And we set about creating what we call the community supermarket that really cares. Now I can present this today as a logical, we had our purpose and we did this and we did this and this is where we're at. The reality was nothing like that. It was a kind of a random journey where we went off here and we tried this and we went up many cul-de-sacs and we did lots of U-turns. And part of why I founded Heart and Business, which we'll talk about later, is actually to share that experience with other people so that it can be a somewhat easier and maybe not quite so tumultuous journey. But ultimately we ended up with the community supermarket that really cares. And that means really 3 strands. And it's all linked to what Kieran said at the beginning about my belief that if you put people and our planet first, profit will follow. And it's a change from this obsession. It's almost like this addiction that most companies have to the quarterly profits. Okay? So what does that mean? So for Thornton's Budgeons, it meant, first of all, it means about environment, community, and then the people who work in the business. So let's talk about environment first. Inspired by what happened here with the tax on carrier bags, we were the first supermarket to stop giving away free carrier bags. The UK is a bit slow. I mean, we're now sort of, I think, was it 10 years since the tax here? And we actually have a charge coming in October this year of 5p, really radical stuff. So we stopped giving away free carrier bags, and we were the first supermarket to do that. And in fact, Marks and Spencer's copied us, but no one else did. So even now, still to this day, most of the supermarkets are still lashing out free carrier bags. The other thing which we looked at was our carbon footprint and our energy usage. And supermarkets are pretty high up there in terms of uses of carbon. In fact, the whole food business, it's the largest single use of carbon emissions in any industry in the world, is the food industry. So we've cut our use of energy by more than 50% in 4 years. Okay? So if you look at that, can you imagine if every company in the world actually only used half the energy that they used to use? That would make an enormous difference in terms of the whole issue with climate change. And one of the things we did to do that is we put doors on our chillers. Now I know that sounds a bit, well, that's pretty basic. But every supermarket in the world had this view, and it's a sort of one of these old wives' tales, that you can't put doors on chillers because people will buy less. Okay? It was based on some study Coke did 40 years ago, which was probably made up to say that when you took doors off the chiller, they opened chillers, you sold more. So people reversed that. So we proved to the supermarket industry globally that actually, if you put doors on your chillers, you wouldn't sell any less. In fact, all our customers, when we did it in Crouch End, the stickers that were saying, all these wonderful things were delayed, as is always the case. So for the first week, there was no stickers. And all our customers instantly got it and says, why don't everybody else do this? It's so obvious. Because also, when you go to the supermarket, those aisles are really cold because all the air spills out. So you have to turn the heating up. So you have all this wasted energy coming out of the tillers, and then you have heating as well running. And as a result, we had all the major supermarket chains to come up. Look, we had people from Australia and Canada, and pretty most of the major multiple supermarkets globally now have introduced this as policy. So, little contribution, well, major contribution actually, based on that. If you look at our community, so one of the things with the carrier bags we did was I'm sort of quite cynical when you go to a hotel and it says, you know, to help save the environment, you know, please reuse the towels and the bedclothes, and you're thinking, yes, but cynically, are they just trying to save money? So we pledged that everything, by not giving away carrier bags, every penny we save, because that's what a carrier bag cost, we would put into a charitable trust. And we gave away £125,000 over 4 years to 45 different small community projects. So you're linking community and environment. We're helping the environment by reducing the amount of carrier bags we're putting back into landfill, and we're helping our communities. We also did, Kieran mentioned food from the sky. We set up a farm on the roof of the Crouch End store. We had a flat roof. Somebody in the community came to me with this idea of connecting on growing food. I said, well, why don't we grow it on the roof? So we had our customers, people from the community, and local school children volunteering to grow food on the roof, which we then harvested and sold every week down in the supermarket. And the money went back into it because it was a separate social enterprise. So people learned about food growing, they connected with food. We had the freshest, most wonderful tasting food because it just tasted fantastic. And it was the only supermarket in the world to do this, and it was the most local food anywhere in the world because it was 9 vertical metres from where it was grown to where we actually sold it. So even in a farm store where the field was just beside the shop, it still was never closer than 9 metres. Another thing we example of working in the community, when the whole News of the World, you're familiar with News of the World and the phone hacking scandal. So they were hacking Prince Charles's phone and Hugh Grant, and they're people well able to take care of themselves. But when they hacked the phone of Millie Dowler, who was a schoolgirl who had been abducted and then murdered. And actually, by listening to their messages, they actually gave her parents the possibility that she's still alive, that she was still listening to her messages. And I thought that was just too far. I mean, she wasn't from our community, but she was from a community around the country. So I took a stance and said we weren't going to sell this paper anymore. And we just started using Twitter. This is in the early days of Twitter. So I rather innocently, before Twitter, we would have put a sign in the store, and I might have written a letter to the Grocer magazine, and it would have got a little ripple, and a few people in the community would have liked it. But I posted this innocently on Twitter at 9 o'clock in the morning. By 9:30, I had every national newspaper on the phone to me. I had TV crews on the way to the store. So I spent all day sitting on Twitter. And literally, we had been on Twitter about a month. We ended up being the most trending Twitter site in the country. And at 3 o'clock, Rupert Murdoch flew us News of the World. And at 3:05, there was a tweet that said, never underestimate the power of Thornton's budget as Crouch End, which I thought was very amusing. But my point of the story was, we set out to do the right thing. We ended up getting a lot of publicity and a lot of coverage, national coverage for it. But we set out to do the right thing. We didn't set out looking for publicity. So that's kind of the community. And I could talk for 3 or 4 hours about some of the things we've done in the community, but you get an impression of it. The third piece is our own internal people. And this is part of the journey, because for the first 3 or 4 years, I didn't really think about that. I was focused on the environment and our community. And then I kind of realised, almost like we're missing something internally. Around the same time, in the Crouch End store, which was my original one, we had a Tesco next door, which was interesting because I'd been talking for so long about how easy it was to compete against Tesco, and we had the chance to do so. And a Marks and Spencer's around the corner. And that was fine, and we competed very well against them. Tesco refurbished, but they were all changing to try to improve, but we were really, really thriving. And then Waitrose, which is a kind of premium upmarket brand, when Woolworths went bust, and Woolworths has been on the verge of going bust for at least 30 years, and eventually did go bust. They moved in next to Tesco, and that was a real struggle. So over 3 years, we just kind of, we lost quite a lot of business. As an independent with 2 shops, you can't afford to have one that's losing money every single year. As a chain, you can afford to run, stores at a loss, but not as an independent. And that was quite personally quite tough. I would put a lot of my energy and life and soul into it. But actually, that was happened for a reason. And I'm quite spiritual. I believe everything that happens for a reason. And in fact, the selling of that made me realise that my life's purpose was about how to put the heart back into business. That's why I was here. And actually, with the 2 stores, I could never have done that. I could never have taken that further and started to write the book, which I have started. And got to a certain point, put it aside, and I've just literally brought it back, and the proposal is going to be finished soon, and hopefully I'll get an agent and a publisher. And it got me the opportunity to start Art and Business, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. So it happened for a good reason. It also made me realise I took a sabbatical, which is where I realised about my life purpose, for 3 months, having sold Crouch End. And Belsize was, ran like clockwork, and I left them for 3 months, didn't speak to anybody, I came back and everything was still fine. It's a real testament to the people in my team. But I realised when I was away that we needed to go much deeper into what we were doing with people. Okay, so we created a thing called a Heart Programme. So I want to show you a short, about a 5-minute video on what that Heart Programme is about, and to give you a flavour.
A 2013 poll by Gallup found that a staggering 87% of people globally are emotionally disconnected from their work. Given that we spend more than half of our waking hours at work, this is a tragedy for each and every unhappy individual, and of course for the businesses where they work. Businesses which, because of this emotional disconnection, are both less productive and less profitable.
My perspective that it's really important for businesses to have a heart led us to look at the working environment here at Nordic Budgeting. To see how we could engage people better in their jobs, create a safe environment where people felt trusted and cared for, and they could really bring all their full potential to their job every single day, and at the same time help us achieve our objectives as a company.
We commenced our program with a one-to-one interview with each team member. These interviews took about up to an hour. If the team member knows that we care, then they can trust what we're doing.
After the interviews, they ran a series of departmental workshops. These were no ordinary workshops. They began with a meditation to create a relaxed and comfortable mood to enable people to share what they're grateful for in their lives, what's causing them pain, and their concerns for our planet and the company. And to ensure everyone's voice was heard, they use a talking stick.
If we don't talk about the truth, we're not really close to home, to us. We constantly try to avoid it. So I invite you to be really truthful, really compassionate, really open to each other.
With input from everyone, the team identified their skills and talents and then brainstormed ideas to develop the company.
It's make you feel good. You feel more confident, you feel more open with your colleagues. I think yes, it helps them to, be open with the customers. I just feel I'm really part of this content buttons and just feel like my home.
Just broke down barriers between the staff, and it allowed some of us to form like new friendships and things, so that was a good idea. I would recommend the Heart Programme. Just to have a programme where people who work together can come together outside of work and get to know each other's lifestyle, to see our personality bloom more, I think is a really good idea, because then once you come back into the environment, you help each other a lot more.
We had a sort of team beforehand, and it sort of seemed a lot better, much more tight as a unit. Yeah, I hope I've got a better understanding of people and not be so short sometimes. Gives me a bit more patience.
I even tried to do the same Heart Programme at home.
Wow.
And it was really interesting to hear from my family what they're thinking about that, and we start feeling better, more closer. Even now, more love is more bigger and bigger.
The Heart programme has resulted in a positive mindset, one that creates a constructive atmosphere and leads to real change in the company. One outcome is the intention set by the Fresh Food team that Thornton Budgeons would never again throw away any edible food.
Globally, we waste between 30 and 50% of all of the food that we produce. In the UK, that's around 15 million tonnes of food each year, much of which is perfectly edible.
The team worked with Sustain and Centrepoint to develop a process that ensured their daily food surplus is used to feed the homeless.
I've been really struck by how the whole team at Thornton's Budgeons has really got behind this and shown great commitment to it.
Thornton's Budgeons now have a team that are engaged and feel safe to bring their full potential to work every day.
Since we implemented the Heart programme, there's a buzz and there's an energy around the store that there wasn't before. And customers come and notice it. They don't know why, but they notice there's a difference.
When Rassus said that she had taken it home and used it with her family, I must say the effect was just like, my God, that's really... And a number of people have done that, taken the things we did and used them at home. And given that as a company, one of our intentions is to positively impact on the families of people who work at Thornton's Budgeons, that was really moving for me. Now, in practical terms, we have a mystery shopper, which Budgeons do every month. And prior to this, we used to get pretty inconsistent scores. We might get 100% one month, and then we get 76 and 69 and then 85. And I was a bit sort of, it's only one a month and it's a bit random. But it's funny, since we started doing that, we get 100% every single time. We've never got anything other than 100%. We've lost a few marks for, stuff on the shop floor, but in terms of the service levels, we've always got 100%. And our sales moved by 6% after we did that. Okay, so we're in a brutally competitive market, so there's all sorts of stuff happening. But you could see when we had implemented this program that we had a distinct shift in sales. Now we're not, it's not like we've done that. We're going through a continuous process. We're looking at the moment. We're working, helping one of my colleagues in Heart and Business is helping us in the store to go through a process to identify what we all love doing. And our aim is to find that everybody only does what they love doing. Because there's three things. There's things you love doing and generally you're good at them. There's things you're good at doing but don't particularly like, and in my case that's accountancy, because I'm really good at it but I really don't enjoy it. And then there's things you're not good, you don't enjoy and not good at. So we're trying to move where everybody is only doing the former, what they really love doing. And we are in as I said, a really brutally competitive marketplace, much more so than it's ever been. So again, life and the universe has sort of got us in a place where we're continuously having to change and develop, because just to survive, basically. Now, let's broaden out and away from Thornton's Budgeons for a second, and I want to play you something else, if I can get myself back here. So, I think that some of the things businesses have done is rather bizarre, driven by this drive for profitability. And one of them is what I call the call centre syndrome. So, if I can get this going, this is a bit of humour for you.
Hello, and welcome to We Really Value Your Business, but can't be bothered. In fact, don't want to talk to you, as that means we might actually connect with you, Limited. Your call is important to us, so to make things much easier for you, seriously, it's not in any way to make it easier for us. Please select your preferred choice from our 2,791 options. Calls may be recorded for health and safety reasons. Press option 1 if you think you might like to buy something from us and are wearing blue today. Press option 2 if you think you might like to buy something from us and are wearing red today. Blah, 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 blah. Press option 56 if you bought something that isn't what we said it was. You can leave a recorded message and we won't
Press option 798 if you ordered something that didn't arrive. We'll ask you a series of automated questions. Will be less than 76. And at the end, we'll tell you that we cannot be bothered to see what went wrong at our end. Press option 2134 if you'd like to specify preferred delivery slot for the product you ordered. Please choose the week you would like. Make sure you will be in at home all day, every day, waiting for us to arrive. Otherwise, we will need to rearrange the delivery for another week at an additional charge of £5. Press option 2791 if you would like to speak to a human being. We'll then put you on hold for about 30 minutes and then cut you off. Thank you for calling. We really value your business, but really can't be bothered to talk to you.
So thank you, Eudora, for recording that. So it's slightly exaggerated, but that's the experience we all... Anybody who hasn't had that experience, trying to get something, buy something? Seems every company in the world has gone that way. My sister lives in Canada, and my son and I came back from there recently. So not only did we have to print our own boarding cards before we got to the airport, we then printed our own luggage labels in the airport. We had to... then we had to load our own bags onto the carousel. So it's like, they'll soon have us flying the bloody plane. All of this is being done because companies are trying to save money. And they've completely lost the whole point about satisfying customers. So forget anything else other than just common sense. And my eldest son was saying to me over the weekend, he said, I just don't get it how companies end up doing this ridiculous nonsense. It's so obvious it's a crazy way of doing business. Yeah, this is the outcome of the profit addiction that I'm talking to you about. Now, if you look at studies, there's a wonderful report called From Stockholder to Stakeholder, and it's analysed every single study that's been done on companies being more sustainable, caring. And 90% plus of the studies they've looked at have proven there is a positive financial correlation to whether it's cost saving, so they quote M&S, who save now £200 million a year with their Plan A programme, to cost of capital, to borrowing rates, to shareholder returns, to profitability. No matter what measure you use, being what I would call more heartful is actually better business. And they quote the reverse, and they quote BP. So BP, interestingly enough, who are a client of ours in the consultancy, went through this sort of profit obsession, which led them to cutting costs, cutting corners, and they end up with the Deepwater Horizon disaster, which killed 11 people and destroyed the ecosystem of the Gulf of Mexico and cost them billions. In fact, their share prices underperformed that of their competitors by 60%. So actually this obsession with, I've got to maximise profits to maximise shareholder value, ends up blowing up in your face if you're not careful. So there's really good logical business commercial reasons for doing this. This isn't just something nice to do because, it actually makes a lot more sense. And the good news is that there is a lot of people in the world beginning to think about this. And there's a movement called the Conscious Capitalism Movement, founded by John Mackay, the founder of Whole Foods. There is the Blueprint for Better Business, which is set up by an initiative actually started by Archbishop Vincent Nichol, the Catholic Archbishop of London, England, I don't know. Anyway, the church are involved, which is interesting, but they've produced a blueprint that will help businesses who want to be more purposeful. It's a really interesting piece of work. And there's a concept called a B Corporation. Has anybody heard of a B Corporation? Okay, so legally in the States, it's in the Constitution that businesses have to maximise shareholder value. Okay? So they helped create an alternative type company called a B Corporation who maximises the return to the stakeholders, which is the shareholders, the environment, the community, and the people who work in it. So B Corporate, there are about 1,200 globally now. There are 7 in the UK. We're looking at becoming one. And basically you change your articles of association. You have certain things you have to do to become a B Corporation. But Nutura, the big public Brazilian cosmetics company, is the first publicly listed company to become one. And Unilever have declared their interest in becoming one. So there's a whole load of great stuff happening there, which is fantastic for this. So it's a movement. It's not, I don't feel if I'm standing here on my own, basically, in terms of doing this. Now, it's interesting. There's again, quoting the report I mentioned earlier, there's an Accenture study which said that interviewed CEOs, and 81% of them said that their sustainability reputation was really important with customers. Yet only 33% said that businesses were doing enough in this whole arena. And what's the barrier? And to me, the barrier is fear. People are afraid. So these people who have millions and billions are afraid they don't have enough and they need more. Because I sometimes don't understand how billionaires continuously seem to need more money. So greed is a form from fear. Greed comes from, I'm greedy because I want to get more because I'm afraid I don't have enough. And there are actually only two ways of approaching life. Is either everything we do either from a place of fear or a place of love. You can't one or the other. And most business comes from a place of fear. Most companies are run from a place of fear. And that's really, I think that's really sad, actually. And that explains this 87% piece I talked to you earlier. So, having had this realization that my life purpose was around this, I set up with 6 others, Heart and Business Limited, to take my experiences and what I've done and to share it with other people. So by talking at environments like this and at conferences, and actually to work with companies where the leaders, and this has to be top down, this is not something you can grow from the bottom. The CEO has to say, I want to do this. So we're working with CEOs and companies who've said, yeah, we want to be like this, but actually we're here now. We don't really know how we're going to. We know we want to change, but we don't know how to do that. So we're advising companies in terms of that. And I'm going to read out our dream, okay, to you. So the dream of Heart and Business Limited is that companies put people and our planet first, trusting profit will follow. The dream is of companies where we have a purpose, companies that make a broader contribution to society and see the world beyond the next set of quarterly profits. Companies where we consider all our stakeholders, our employees, our community, our planet, and of course our shareholders. Companies that care about the impact on people, whether those people work in our company, our customers, or live in the community in which we operate. Companies where everyone is doing the job they really want to do rather than the one they are good at. A place where there is passion, authenticity, and love, where we are making a difference. We are all heard and understood, and we all hear and understand our colleagues. Companies where there's heartfelt leadership, where we co-create plans and where wealth flows. Companies where people are themselves without fear of judgment or punishment. Companies that care about our planet, that consider future generations. Companies that take into account what we are leaving behind for our children and our grandchildren. This is our dream about how companies will thrive in the future. Indeed, some companies already are. In fact, at Heart and Business, we believe this is the only way forward. So I want to end with a couple of comments. Kieran mentioned I'm an ambassador to Embacum, and Embacum's founder, Mac, who's a good friend, when he talks very passionately about the children's fire. So if you go back to the native Indian tribes, they would sit in council around the fire and make decisions about the laws and the future. And the fire in the centre was the children's fire. And basically they would have that there to remind them that everything they did, what was the impact on our children and the future of our community. And they would never make a law that was going to damage the children's fire, the future for the children. So I've got 2 sons who are 18 and 20, and I certainly don't want to be complicit to leaving behind a planet that is in a worse state for them and indeed their children. So I appeal to you as you go into the working world, those of you who are in the working world, if anything I've said has touched you, to do something with it, to take some action, so that we can actually move ourselves into a better place. Because as businesses, we have a huge amount of influence in the world, and I believe we have a responsibility to behave better than we are now. Thank you.